Hey guys, it's Britt. Tonight I'm here to talk to you about the book that Holly Madison wrote. This is an older book. It's called Down the Rabbit Hole, and I just listened to it on Audible, and I don't review books, but I did have some thoughts about it. So if you're interested, please keep watching. All right, you guys, so if you don't know who Holly Madison is, her claim to fame, whether or not she wants to admit it, is that she was the main girlfriend of Hugh Hefner for, I believe, 7 years total. I was introduced to Holly back in I would say the mid 2000s, when the television network E, we all know E, had a show called The Girls Next Door, and I was really curious about it. I started watching it and I was hooked. I used to watch it all the time. In fact, I have the DVDs. I should have probably grabbed those just to show you guys, but it doesn't matter. I do have the DVDs. I was fully obsessed with this show, and I became fully obsessed with all things Playboy. I think that a lot of us, depending on when you grew up or how old you were back then, I know like me and anyone that I knew was watching The Girls Next Door and were just fully enthralled by this show, by Holly, Bridget, and Kendra, by just the idea of living at the Playboy mansion. It was so cool and luxurious. I remember one of my best friends, she worked with me at Nordstrom when I first started working at MAC Cosmetics, and she ended up moving out to LA, and she got invited to a Playboy party. And I remember talking to her and I was like, oh my God, that's crazy. Because back then, kind of before more secrets started to come out about Hugh Hefner and the mansion, the idea of going to a Playboy party was luxe. It was the lap of luxury. It was lusted after, and it was the hottest ticket in LA. If you could go to a Playboy party, then you were, that was the goal. That was the party to go to. So I remember she went to one of the parties. I don't know which one it was. I can't remember. But then when I went out there, the first time I ever went to LA, I remember I asked her to take me by the Playboy mansion, and we went through and saw some other, celeb houses and stuff too. But, because of that show, I think that it really, anyone that watched that show, it gave them literally an inside look of what it was like to live at the mansion. But on top of that, the viewers also deeply connected with one of the three girls, if not all three. I think most people had their favorites, and I was always a Holly fan, and then I really liked Bridget. Kendra, to me, even though I was younger than Kendra, she always came off as annoying to me, and even back then I just found her kind of obnoxious, and so I gravitated towards Bridget and Holly, but I was enthralled with the show. As far as her years after the mansion, I didn't really follow Holly very much. I didn't follow any of them very much. Back then we didn't have Instagram and stuff like that. I know that there was Twitter, but I've never had a Twitter, so I didn't really know, a whole lot about her. And then once I was on Instagram, I started following Holly on Instagram. And this book came out in 2015, and I think it really opened up the floodgates as to what it was really like living at the mansion, because this was written by someone who recently lived at the mansion, lived there for a very long time. It wasn't like a 6-month or 1-month kind of stay. And she was the #1 girl. So she knew a lot of things and saw a lot of things. So when this book came out, I knew that it was going to be super popular, especially anyone like me who had watched the show, or even if you didn't watch the show and you just know about the enterprise and the company, it might have piqued interest for those people as well. So this book on Goodreads has scathing reviews. I'm going to read a couple of them for you guys just so you kind of can hear my thoughts, and then also some thoughts of other people that have read the book. And, keep in mind, these reviews were written back in 2015 and 2016, but it'll still give you a look and an idea of what other people think too. One of the first things that I found really interesting was that Holly said that she actually asked Hef if she could move in. I always kind of thought that it was the opposite, where he would invite people to move in, but for her to, I can only imagine going up to Hugh Hefner and asking if I could move in. So, you know, she did approach him and asked if she could move in, and it was going to be a short term, we can try this out, is what Hef told her, and it ended up working out. So during her time there, she also, in this book, there is a lot of woe is me, and I don't ever want to victim blame, but just to kind of give you guys the overall vibe of this book, if you haven't read it or listened to it, it is very much woe is me, poor me, pity me, and I don't think that that was necessarily what she wanted to do, because that's not always a good look. But it does come off as, you know, I was bullied, everyone was mean to me. Holly definitely in this book puts herself up on a pedestal. She talks about how none of the other girls liked watching old movies with Hef, and they didn't like staying home as much as she did. So she kind of took on those tasks, and it helped her gain the spot as the number one girlfriend, because she was taking those tasks that all the other girls didn't want to do. She took them on, and on top of it, she also let people know that while she took those on, it also allowed for the other girlfriends to venture out and see boyfriends and do whatever it is that they were doing outside of the mansion gates. Kind of on top of the woe is me kind of whole ordeal, it was also a lot of her telling people all the great things that she did in order to make sure that she was doing good according to Hef, and sort of patting herself on the back at the same time. One of the big things in this book that sort of really, I'm not going to say it surprised me, but it did shock me in a certain way. She talked about how she was fighting depression during her time living at the mansion. And when she went to Hugh Hefner about it, he told her to talk to Mary. If you guys don't know, Mary O'Connor was Hugh Hefner's receptionist secretary for many, many years. And Mary ended up, you know, in The Girls Next Door, she was very much like that motherly figure to the residents, the girls. And I love Mary. All the time that I was watching the show, she was just so sweet, so precious, so kind. And now looking back on it, hindsight is 2020, I'm actually quite surprised that she tolerated Hugh Hefner for as long as she did, if I'm being honest. So he encouraged her to talk to Mary about her problems. She wasn't going to be seeing a therapist, which is just so ridiculous. If someone has the willpower and the self-awareness to be able to say, I need to see a therapist, there should never be any questions asked. Those should be services provided to the person, like no limitations. Absolutely. Go today, get the first appointment, go take care of yourself. But I also believe that back then, the stigma around mental health, there's still a stigma around mental health in my personal opinion, but I think back then it was even more so than it is, say, in the past few years especially. She did later on end up seeing a doctor and being prescribed some antidepressants, but I don't really know if that doctor, you know, if she would have seen a therapist, would the therapist have been able to help her in a way that the doctor didn't? The whole idea of therapy is to talk through your problems, have a therapist to, you know, kind of tell everything to, and many times it is paired with a prescription drug, but the way that she describes it in the book, it kind of sounds like she went to the doctor, got a prescription, and then didn't have any follow-up therapy sessions or anything like that. At the end of the day, am I really surprised that Hugh Hefner would say, go talk to the secretary instead of going to see a therapist? Not really, especially after kind of hearing about a lot of the crazy antics and the weird rules that he had for, you know, his girlfriends and residents of the mansion. It's just unfortunate. It really sucks. And I do wonder if the sequence of events that would happen afterwards would have been different if she would have seen a therapist instead of just going to this doctor and getting a prescription. Now, when Girls Next Door first came out, it was, you know, it was popular for sure. And I always kind of thought, these girls are making a lot of money. They're definitely getting paid. They are definitely doing really well for themselves. And one of the revelations in this book came when Holly let everyone know that for season 1 of The Girls Next Door, the girls were not paid. So they were not paid at all. They did get paid for a photo shoot that they did. They each got paid $25,000, but that had nothing to do with the actual show, The Girls Next Door. And that's pure insanity to me. Even if they are living at the mansion and not having to pay rent, they're still, you know, sharing their personal lives with the world. And I think that's absolutely insane. I cannot imagine being on a TV show and not receiving a penny for payment. Where does that happen? Only the Playboy Mansion. And also, by the way, that $25,000 they were paid was the same tier that Playboy would pay just saying, you know, a regular Playboy photo shoot. That would be the fee that the girl would get. They weren't even on the tier of like a celebrity. They were literally paid just like every other Playboy model that walked in the door, which I don't know. I find that very interesting considering the success of the show. And to think that they did this and got paid the same as if, you know, a random girl from Florida came to do a photo shoot, that's the same fee that she would have gotten paid. But these girls were the 3 main characters and the reason that The Girls Next Door was so successful. Now, as far as all the claims in this book about Hef being verbally abusive to Holly, I definitely believe that. You know, I don't think that we should ever try to victim blame or say that someone else's story is not valid. And to be honest, any man who builds his mass fortune by having multiple girlfriends and having his ego fed 24/7, you know, I could see him being that way and constantly wanting to be in control. And I fully believe that he was verbally abusive to her. She did definitely say he never got physical with her, but at the same time, verbal abuse should not be discounted or thrown away because it can still be very traumatizing and very damaging to the person on the receiving end. Another thing that Hef decided to say was that Holly writing this book was trying to rewrite history, and I think that goes back to just completely crumpling up and throwing away someone else's story. That's, you know, BS in my opinion. Everyone has a story and everyone's story is going to be a little different. You can literally have, in this example, 3 women living in the same house for the same period of time, just about, and all 3 of them are going to have a different set of experiences based on what their seat was during that given time. One of the other things she did in this book a fair amount, in my opinion, that I didn't really care for was the fact that she had very much this everyone else is a mean bimbo and I was the one that was just, you know, some poor little girl that was being completely naive and not having a clue what's going on. So I don't know. Again, I mean, if that was her experience, that was her experience, but I do feel like it was sort of overloaded into this book, and it was constantly mentioned how mean girls, everyone was mean, they're plastic bimbos, they're carbon copies of one another. Holly Madison looked the exact same as all the other girls that were at the mansion. So, you know, like it or not, that's just the facts. She did talk about how she cut her hair when she first moved into the mansion into a blonde bob and wore red lipstick, and Hugh Hefner absolutely hated it and ridiculed her for it. So that could also have something, you know, that probably has a lot to do with the fact that she, you know, tried to look like everyone else. But it's a lot of finger pointing and it's a lot of, I'm not like the other girls, you know, I'm better and this is why kind of vibe. Now, something else that was mentioned in this book that I completely forgot about until I was listening to it is that Kendra Wilkinson got married at the Playboy Mansion. Let me know what you guys think about that. I think that it's very bizarre. Of all of the wedding venues that you could pick in, you know, the entire United States, you're going to pick the Playboy Mansion. And initially she wanted Hef to walk her down the aisle. I realized that, you know, maybe she looked at him as a father figure, but that makes it even more bizarre and weird to me, awkward. You know, at the end of the day, her brother ended up giving her away and walking her down the aisle. But just the fact that it was held at the mansion, to me, it's very weird, very bizarre. I don't get it. Okay, so let's read this review. I think that this is a good critical review. I don't agree with all of it, but let's go through it. This person said, I admit it, I loved the girls next door. Their lives seemed so fun, so carefree. I loved all three girls, and especially Holly, who seemed genuine, classy, and had a good head on her shoulders. I felt when she left the show, it was again a classy move on her part. She realized she was never getting children or a marriage out of the relationship and moved on. I respected that. So it was rather surprising to see her write a tell-all book with the intention of telling her own story and then spending a huge amount defaming her own character. Let me save you the pain and loss of brain cells and give you the rundown of what Holly Madison wants you to know. Honestly, did she mention honestly? The only reason she ever moved into the Playboy mansion was that she had nowhere else to live. She treats this as if it was the only solution to her problem and that she would have been homeless otherwise. Holly, you see, is never responsible for anything that happens. She is the victim of circumstance, honestly. I had to stop listening to the book halfway through. In the 5th hour of her claiming that she was in denial about her relationship with Hugh Hefner and that it was all an act. Well, I suggest someone get her an Academy Award ready, because bravo to her for almost a decade of excellent acting. This is a sad, sorry attempt at redemption that wasn't necessary. It's a money grab and it makes her look like a gold-digging fool. And I don't really necessarily, agree with the gold-digging fool thing. I think that Holly's doing just fine on her own. But like it or not, she will always be known because of Playboy. That's just how it is. And I realize that, a lot of these celebrities or reality TV stars, they want to separate themselves from whatever entity got them famous, and I fully understand that. But at the end of the day, if you get very famous because of your association with this company or this business or this person, it is sort of the risk, that you take when you have such a close alignment with this person or this company. Okay, let's read this one. Oh, that's the other thing that came out in this book, is that Hef actually rents the rooms at the mansion. So if he didn't have girls living in one of the rooms, then he wouldn't be charged for rent for that room. And I think Holly said that his master suite was $25,000 a month. Bridget's room was Bridget's room was $10,000 and Kendra's was like $8,000 or something like that. I found that super interesting. So Playboy Enterprises actually owns the mansion and he rented rooms out of it. Who knew? When I was watching the show, I would have never known that. This reviewer said, I don't condone manipulative relationships, but are you kidding me? My opinion, I don't sympathize with what Holly went through when she didn't object to any of it until many years later. I really like her. She comes off as sweet and intelligent, but her actions were so frustrating. Pretty much she moved into the mansion because she needed a place to live. Her dream was to be famous, and her goal living at the mansion with Hef was to get in the magazine. She had an agenda, so I don't understand why she was surprised when she wasn't treated like a princess. I wasn't surprised to learn that life at the mansion wasn't 24/7 parties and luxury, and that, gasp, the women were treated like replaceable objects. Why was Holly living with the most famous womanizer on the planet? Are you seriously shocked he wanted to have sex with you, treated you like a dime a dozen, wasn't sincere when he said you were his one true love? She put up with that plus mean girl roommates for 7 years while using the publicity perks as a stepping stone to further her career, then whines that it was so bad. She often describes her life at the mansion as oppressive. She was 20 to 27 years old with a 9 p.m. curfew, had to ask permission for everything she wanted, and constantly had to try to get along with the other living girlfriends. This book made me feel so suffocated. Before she moved in, she was working as a waitress and scaping by, going to college and auditions. Is it really that bad when your dignity and self-esteem are at stake? This entire book is a complaint and nothing is her fault. And that's kind of what I got from it. I appreciate the fact that she told her story. I think that everyone should have the right to tell their story, absolutely. But it was a lot of finger pointing and, you know, unless it was her taking responsibility for being oblivious, nothing else was her fault. And I always kind of look at this like a common denominator kind of thing. If you have problems with every single person that you come across in life, you are the common denominator. Maybe you're the one that has an issue. If literally everyone that you have ever come in contact with ends up falling out, or you always have disagreements with everyone around you, maybe it's you that's the problem. And I am not here to victim blame. I am just here to point out the obvious, where maybe it's not this, you know, innocent, naive little girl running around. And maybe she needed an attitude adjustment, but maybe it took her those years to grow and actually reflect. You know, she didn't take any responsibility. But at the end of the day, maybe it was her that wasn't the perfect little angel that could do no wrong. Okay, so this is the last review that I'll read, and I think this kind of will close out the video perfectly. So this person said, feel bad for me, but don't, because I'm better than everyone else. I'm using Hef because I'm about to be homeless, and God forbid I move back home like a normal person. Also, I want to be an actress, but I'm too lazy to pursue the traditional way, like actually trying. So I guess I'll sit here and be miserable while getting everything handed to me and then complaining that it's not enough. I'm totally not here to use Hef and get whatever I can out of the situation, because I'm not like those other girls. Willingly stayed in a situation that was making me miserable because I was finally getting what I wanted, reality TV. Yay! Nothing is ever my fault ever. More whining, more holier than thou speeches about the other girls. The sense of entitlement is unreal. I simply cannot sympathize with this girl for her bragging about how intelligent she is. I find myself lacking the ability to write a coherent review after reading this hot mess. So I think that, you know, that was pretty rough, but at the same time, there is this happy medium of not victim blaming and, you know, giving Holly credit that she deserves for telling her story. But I think that it was the finger pointing and the throwing everyone else under the bus that sort of put a bad taste in people's mouths. It wasn't the fact that she stayed at the mansion or anything like that. It was the I'm good, they're bad mentality that she had throughout this entire book. And it was the majority of the book. So, anyway, you know, those are my thoughts. If you guys are interested, check out the full episodes of The Girls Next Door. They're all over YouTube. You can easily watch them. Listen to her audiobook if you're interested. If you were a fan of The Girls Next Door, you know, I think that it's a really good, I was going to say read, but I think it's a good listen, because she actually reads the book herself, which I found that much better. I love when the author reads their own book. So either way, and, you know, tell me, did you guys watch The Girls Next Door? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Was it a guilty pleasure? Have you read this book? If you've read or listened to her book, tell me what you think down below. Did you get that sort of I'm not like the other girls vibe that a lot of other people got? I kind of got it too. What do you think? Either way, let me know. So for now, if you like the video, please leave a like and a comment. And if you'd like to see more from me in the future, please subscribe. I'll see you guys soon. Bye.